Hello everybody, welcome to Dungeons & Drams. Today we're going to be talking about outdoor dungeons. Now, how is this different than the dynamic dungeons that we created early on in this channel's lifetime? Well, the idea is, using what we learned in our last video about weather, we are going to make our dungeon different based off the time of day, or the weather outside, or even the season. There is going to be different kinds of creatures lurking around, whether it's nighttime or daytime. Maybe it's harder to traverse because it's pouring rain, or it's extremely hot, or something else. So we're going to make our dynamic dungeon. We're going to add some variables for weather, time, season, or anything else that you want, and then we're going to build it that way. This could make your traversal from point A to point B a lot more interesting, especially if your players roll a really high perception roll, and suddenly you have this whole fleshed out elvish ruin sitting in the middle of nowhere. That could be really fun. Let's get into it. Our prompt this time is going to be a bit more complex than it usually is, so you can find this over on the Patreon. It'll be a free post as always, and you can just copy, paste it, and make it yourself. So we're going to use this prompt, we're going to come up with our concept, and then we're going to fiddle a little bit, and then I'll leave it to you guys to finish off whatever dungeon that you're working on yourselves. So, here we go. I'm a dungeon master playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Please design an outdoor dungeon based on the following variables, allowing me to adjust them as needed. So obvious ones like name, description, theme. So theme in this case, I would suggest putting something like outdoor, or outdoor ruins, or mountain pass with multiple passageways going into a cliff. Like, you could be a little bit more descriptive there. Primary features. This would be things like if you have something in particular that you really want there. So let's say, I don't know, I'm just making this up. Let's just keep using this elven forest ruin, okay? So maybe there's like a main building that used to be a town hall of sorts, or like a throne room. Maybe I want that to be my main point of interest. Okay, so primary feature. Number of areas. This really depends on how long you want to spend there. Maybe you want 5, maybe you want 2, maybe you want 12. Think about it, whatever you want. Complexity is going to be something more like linearity. So you could say something like non-linear with multiple paths, or you could say it's straightforward, like more of an on the rails kind of thing. Next, we have player level. So player level is going to obviously make sense. How many players do you have? What level are they? Role-playing opportunities. These are things like NPC interactions, or moral dilemmas, or puzzles. In that same Patreon post, I'll just to make it easier, I'll drop my prompts for both NPC creation as well as monster creation if you end up wanting to do some homebrew. Then we have combat encounters. So if you have something in mind that you'd like them to fight, put it here. Otherwise, it'll come up with something. Then we have weather effects, time effects, and then we'll go on some more. So now the weather effects, if you want to, again, it's like I'm finally getting to the point where the channel has enough different videos that you can use those videos in your new videos, right? So weather effects, if you want to, check out the video I did last time on creating weather effects. If you want to make something really cool or really weird, then do that first and then add it here, and be very descriptive with it. Like if you want to say, I don't know, there was one about fire dripping from the sky, essentially. Like, make sure you do a good job describing that so it can know how to incorporate that into your dungeon. And then time effects, that's just going to be the time of day. Is it nighttime, daytime, middle of the day, whatever. Okay, so this last piece here is, this isn't something I would typically add unless I was actually using ChatGPT. The rest of these, like, honestly, this could help you just to brainstorm your own thing if you don't want to use AI, but these things is just giving it some hints as to what to do. I won't bother reading through these. You can check the prompt. All right. And then the most important part, do you understand? Because if you don't put that, it's going to just start generating your dungeon, and we don't want that yet. Real quick change. I changed the last line, do you understand, to do you understand? If so, prompt me for values, because it did actually send out a whole dungeon. So just make that little change. As usual, ChatGPT is nothing if not verbose. So it gave a whole lot of prompts for the variables that I entered. So we have name, description, theme, etc. And it gave a number of different options, but also more just suggestions. So for example, the primary features, these are things that are going to be important, right? So it suggested ruins, shrines, rivers, etc., etc. Here's what I would do. I usually would have a separate notepad, literally like the notepad application, and I have my variables, and then, or my prompt, and then I have my values. So I work over there and I use ChatGPT to add additional prompts. For example, I say, I don't really like any of those primary features. Could you suggest 20 more of them? Or I'd rather have some primary features for a swampy area or something like that. So, I mean, ruins could make sense, but maybe you're not going to have rivers and lakes inside of a swamp because it's already wet, things like that. So consider using ChatGPT to prompt for additional things, and then ultimately you come up with your answer, and now that's going to be a new input for your development. About a week ago, I asked you all what you wanted to do this video on. Swamp Necropolis was winning for a while, but Ancient Forest Shrine ended up pulling it out with 36%. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do an Ancient Forest Shrine. So I filled in my prompts here, and let's just go over what we did. Now, I didn't want to give it a name or a description. I wanted that to be, done by AI. So I said, please design the dungeon based on the following variables, allowing me to adjust them as needed. Okay, so generate a name, generate a description. The theme is going to be Ancient Forest Shrine. Primary features, ruins, a shrine, and weather-controlled areas. I wanted to call that out specifically because I'm trying to focus on that. Number of areas, 7. I don't know, I just picked it. Complexity, non-linear with multiple paths. Player level appropriate for 4 level 7 adventurers. I figured that if they're out traveling, chances are they're probably like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. With role-playing opportunities, this is actually something I came up with a couple of days ago that I really wanted to put into a dungeon, so this ends up working out. So, role-playing opportunities, moderate. I would like a traveler who had an assistant lost in the ruins. I'd like to have the traveler mention that his assistant was trapped inside when a forest spirit pulled her deep into deep foliage. The traveler has given up on the assistant and will leave by nightfall. This gives a time constraint. So it should be difficult to save the assistant, but if you do, the assistant will share important information. Now you, as a DM, if you're running a campaign, you can decide what this information is. Or maybe the assistant has just learned something about this area. It could be entirely contained or entirely not. Or it could just be somebody that's not an assistant, like throw some NPC who matters in there. Do whatever you want. Okay, combat encounters. I wanted some wildlife because makes sense. I wanted some Fey creatures. I'm going to base this a little bit more around the Fey. An optional boss that does not need to be killed. Just thought that would be an interesting complexity. Weather effects. This is a cool one. So I actually did what I said. I used my same prompt, and I came up with, I prompted for some weather effects. So arcane static. The air hums with energy, causing minor magical surges or wild magic effects. I thought that could be a lot of fun every now and then, just make them roll on the wild magic table. Fey blooms. Sudden bursts of otherworldly flowers spring up, causing hallucinations or strange behaviors. Why not? And then time effects, I said the encounter will take place at 1 p.m., 5 hours before sunset. That kind of just reinforces that whole time constraint. All right, let's see how it did. So we came up with the Verdant Sepulchre, lost shrine beneath the whispering canopy. Okay, so deep in the heart of an ancient forest, half-buried ruins mark the remnants of an old shrine dedicated to a forgotten Fey entity. The area is alive with untamed magic. Strange blooms sprout in seconds, releasing heady perfumes, while the air crackles with unseen energy, triggering unpredictable surges of magic. The ruins have been left untouched for centuries, but something or someone still lingers within. A weary traveler stands at the entrance, recounting how his assistant was taken into the overgrown shrine when the vines moved on their own. He has given up hope and warns that the assistant is surely lost. He intends to leave by nightfall, setting a strict 5-hour time constraint for the adventurers to uncover the shrine's mystery and possibly rescue the assistant. Okay, that's exactly what I asked for. Cool. So I'm going to kind of do this somewhat quickly, and then we're going to hit a couple more key points after this, and then I'll leave it up to you to expand upon this. All right, so the dungeon overview. So I'm mostly making sure it got everything right. So Ancient Forest Shrine, Overgrown Ruins, Fey-influenced Shrine, weather-altered environments, cool. Everything looks good here. All right, cool. Area breakdown. So this is going to be all of the 7 different areas that I gave it. So it has the entrance clearing, which is all about the traveler's warning, and it talks about how you're going to have that interaction with the traveler. Okay, cool. That makes sense. The overgrown courtyard, which is going to be probably that first little area that you enter. A collapsed archway leads deeper into the ruins, but creeping vines move as if alive. So you have some awakened trees, vine blights. That makes sense. Awakened trees will be fun. Solution using fire or radiant magic weakens the vines when combat. Okay, so it's even giving a little bit of an information about how to deal with this. If you speak Sylvan, you could potentially reason with the spirits. That would be an interesting thing. I like that it built in the roleplay aspect. And the assistant's satchel is snagged in the vines inside a torn map of the ruins and a Fey-carved stone key, which is needed later. That's great. I like that a lot. I actually hadn't considered giving them something quite so early. But I think it will just reinforce that they, like, if they walk in and they have a bad fight, but now they have this thing, they're either, like, they could turn around, they could just leave, but no, maybe they won't. I like that. All right, so the reflecting pools, a hallucinatory glade. Pools of unnaturally clear water, mirroring the players with slight delays. Okay, the Fey Bloom effect is strongest here. Players see hallucinations. Okay, a submerged hidden passage leads to Area 6, bypassing some encounters. Okay, so this is definitely going to be the kind of thing that you're going to want to draw out. I can tell you from experience, my players love to go into any body of water that I give them. It's not even the same players. It's like any player. It's just, oh, well, there's like literally 2 days ago, I gave my players an area that they could rest safely. And there was a fountain in the room. And the very first thing that one of the players does is says, I want to jump in the fountain. So they're going to go in the water. The stone circle, Fey negotiation. All right, 6 ancient stone pillars, each humming with latent magic, encircle an altar. A will-o'-the-wisp flickers between the stones, claiming to hold the assistant's fate in its hands. The players must solve a riddle, trade a valuable item, or win a game of chance to gain the wisp's favor and locate the assistant. Okay. If you attack it, 2 dryads will emerge, angered by the violence. Interesting. So, I don't love this one as much. I like it conceptually, but it doesn't have nearly enough information, so I'll probably use that as one of the things that we expand upon right after going through this. So the Shrine of Lost Names, the optional boss. Sunken stone shrine with carvings depicting an ancient Fey entity. The boss is the Verdant Guardian, a massive Fey-touched treant infused with centuries of wild magic. Okay, that'll be fun. If players respect the shrine, the Guardian offers knowledge rather than combat. If attacked or provoked, it becomes a fearsome opponent, forcing players. Yeah, like, if I remember correctly, a treant is a CR9, so that would be a not outrageous fight, but it wouldn't be easy. I like that. Okay. The subterranean tunnel, the assistant's fate. The assistant is trapped within a network of underground roots. The assistant is wrapped in a cocoon of enchanted vines. Players must carefully extract them or risk the vines tightening and choking them. The arcane static causes magic to behave unpredictably, making spell use risky. And then there's the ruined observatory, which is the final puzzle. A broken moon dial that shifts in response to time of day. If the dial is aligned correctly based on assistant's notes, it reveals a hidden chamber with an ancient Fey relic. The relic grants visions of the past or minor chronomancy effects, useful in future adventures. Okay, this isn't terrible. There's definitely room for improvement here, but this is a good start. If the assistant is rescued, they reveal a hidden passage to another dungeon or lost knowledge about the shrine's original purpose. Okay, maybe they just have information about that last ruined observatory area, and like they'll be like, oh, I found a key and I know where it goes. They also warn of coming Fey incursion, hinting at future adventures. Okay. If night falls before the dungeon is cleared, the forest becomes hostile, turning most Fey creatures against the players. The traveler will be long gone, and the assistant is lost forever. If players negotiate with the shrine's guardian, they gain safe passage, a boon of nature, or possibly an ally in future encounters. If the guardian is slain, the forest mourns, causing future Fey encounters to be hostile across the campaign. Oh, I like that, having a long-term effect. That's cool. All right, some treasure and lore discoveries. Fey-woven charm. Okay. Chronomantic relic. Map to another Fey. All right, so this is just the things that you need to make. Okay. And then some final thoughts. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back up here to point number 4, the stone circle, which is the Fey negotiation. Now, I'm going to think for a second about how I want to make this better. So I looked around at how to revise this item, and I wanted to see which Fey creatures were even an option, and I immediately came across Fey dragons. I forgot about them, but I can absolutely picture kind of this little area, the stone circle, with some Fey dragons flying around and kind of like being rude and harassing the players a little bit, but not in a violent way, just in a very mean way. And I think that could be kind of fun. So I said, I don't like the will-o'-the-wisp and would rather have a group of Fey dragons. Could you describe in more detail the game of chance that they would play with the adventurers? We don't want it to be a combat encounter. We want this to be something more fun. I really like what this came up with. I'm actually going to keep this in mind for a future encounter myself. So I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but basically there's 3 Fey dragons, and one of them comes up and talks to him, and it's even got a name, Pollen Whisk, and the other 2 are Flickerwing and Berrytooth. And then they basically say, hey, we want to play a game of chance with you. And then it outlines the rules down here, the Fey Dragons game, Fey's Gambit. So this is similar to a dice game that has shown up in D&D forever. But the idea is they pick a number between 12 and 18. Each player gets to roll 3 d6s, and then they can choose to re-roll one of them. But the wager that they need to give is, I liked this, it could be a memory, a secret, a small magical trinket, or a minor favor. And then, if they win, the Fey Dragons might give them a hint as to the location of the assistant, or a couple of other things. This is really cool. I'll post this in the Patreon as well, just in case you want to read through it a little bit more detail. Okay, so now we have our full outdoor dungeon, but what I didn't see a whole lot of, I did. It used some of those magical weather effects that we gave it, but it didn't really change the layout of the dungeon, given that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw it a curveball, and I'm going to say, at some point, I would like it to just absolutely downpour, and tell me how that's going to affect the terrain and whatever else. So real easy. I say at some point during the adventure, I want it to downpour heavily. What areas would be affected by this and how? Now, if we keep in mind, our other goal was to make sure that there was a time constraint as well as effects from time. And as it mentioned, if you take too long and the sun sets, now it's nighttime and all of the fey creatures in this area become immediately hostile. So I think that one satisfied it, but I just wasn't super happy with what it came up with for the weather. So general effects of the downpour, visibility drops to 20 feet, perception checks have disadvantage, ranged weapons have disadvantage. Okay, cool. So that actually makes sense, but those are kind of standard, and I think you could probably come up with those yourself. So let's talk about the area specific impacts. So with the entrance clearing, essentially, if it starts raining there, the traveler is not going to be in any mood to stick around. He might leave, and you'll have to convince him not to. But if the assistant's still in there, you could still rescue her. He's just not going to hang around. With the second one, the overgrown courtyard, the vines become slick and harder to climb, and there's some water pooling at some of the lower points in the area. Reflecting pool, the pools overflow, creating miniature streams. Illusionary images distort further. The underground passage, this is what I was thinking about. All right, so the underground passage that the assistant's actually hidden in floods, and that's going to be a problem. They have to either swim through it, or maybe it even rains so much that the assistant ends up drowning. The stone circle. So let's see. If the players, the fairy dragons delight in the storm, becoming more mischievous. If the players are still here, the dragons may add an extra random effect to the dice game, such as the next roll is doubled, you must play blindfolded, a sudden lightning bolt strikes, first to dodge gets an extra roll. I like that. And then a few more. So cool. Well, that's exactly what we wanted. It's so funny how ChatGPT, who's this for? Anyway. Okay, so I think we're good here. I'm mostly cutting this off only because I would do this as a live stream and actually really kind of do out the whole thing. But in this case, I'm more trying to give you the tools to do this yourself. I don't know what's in your head. I want you to make up your own dungeons and maybe tell me about them. If you have an idea or a cool idea or some way that this could have been better. Me personally, I like using the awakened trees and awakened shrubs and treants and everything. I would rather have an event where some blink dogs are chasing some displacer beasts or something, just run through, and if you're hiding, you're cool. If you're not, then maybe you have to fight some displacer beasts. I would probably add something like that in. I like little random encounters that show up just if I roll something special on my dice. The worst part is, though, of course, when you don't get to use them. But anyway, I hope that this has been a useful video. Again, check the Patreon for a free post that will tell you how to do all of this, and I hope to see you all next time here on Dungeons and Drams. Cheers.